Lesson 27, we're going to deal with pronouns, especially the interrogative, indefinite, and relative. Now, prior to this, we've had personal pronouns, demonstrative pronoun, reflexive pronoun, and reciprocal pronoun. So you ought to get that in mind. Personal, demonstrative, reflexive, reciprocal, and now interrogative, indefinite, and relative. All those pronouns. But first, let's do the vocabulary on page 170, and we should be ready with workbook page 53. Eteo, I ask or I request. E, whether, or we've already had the meaning if, but now it's whether in indirect questions. Eperotao, I ask a question or I question. Erotao, I ask a question. Karpos, O, fruit. Krisis, krisaos, E, judgment. Opu, adverb, this is a relative adverb, where. Os, E, O, who or which. Otan, that's for ote and on, the epsilon has been dropped. Otan, whenever, with the subjunctive. Ote, when, an adverb, a relative adverb. Un, conjunction, accordingly, therefore. It's post-positive. We know what that is already. Pino, piome, I drink. And then epion, the aorist. Then pu, where. Pos, how. Tis, t, interrogative pronoun, who, which, what. And then tis, t, the indefinite pronoun, someone, something, a certain one, a certain thing. And phagome, very irregular. And ephagon, also irregular, second aorist of estheo. So it's estheo, phagome, ephagon. Those are the vocabulary. Now we have the forms of the three pronouns. We want to look over those. The first one is in paragraph 385. You'll see it there. Tis, tinos, tini, tina, tines, tinon, tisi, tinas. These are both third declension. The masculine and feminine in the same form, and the neuter is a different form. The accent is always on the first syllable in interrogative, and you'll notice that the difference between the two is that the accent, if there's an accent there, it's on the first syllable, and it will be always on the first syllable in the interrogative, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Notice also in paragraph 387 that the acute accent in the interrogative pronoun is never changed to grave, even when the rules call for it. Never changes to grave. Paragraph 387. Then paragraph 388, the indefinite pronoun, tis, ti, same words, but the accent is different. Tis, ti, without the accent, and if it does have an accent, it's on the ultima. You see where it has two syllables, the ultima has the accent, but it's always on that ultima. So differentiate between them. It'll make a big difference. So those are the forms of the interrogative and the indefinite pronoun. Then in paragraph 395, we've already looked at the relative pronoun. We did this in connection with 1 John. You see the rough breathing on every form, and otherwise the endings are very much like the endings for the adjective. Osu, oon, ionis, us, and so forth. So what you may want to do is start another page in the workbook after 10b and 10c. You have this set of forms right along there using the same endings that we had on the nouns and the adjectives and so forth. Now this chapter is giving us quite a bit of new grammar. So that's why we have 5 pages in the workbook available for your use. When we get new grammar, we need to diagram it to see what it does. So on page 53 of the workbook, you'll see that we're working with the interrogative pronouns, and the forms are on 385 that we just saw, but the uses begin in paragraph 390, page 172. So you see he says that both the interrogative and indefinite pronouns can be used either as a noun or separately. For instance, tina karpon ekete, what fruit have ye? We have that one diagrammed on page 53. You have what fruit? So that's as an adjective. It's modifying karpon. tina, modifying carpon. What fruit? Notice the little question mark there. Now we said that we would talk about punctuation when we got a little farther on. Well, we're farther on. And this is the question mark. It looks like a semicolon, and you'll see it at the end of that sentence there in paragraph 390. So we put the question mark at the end of the sentence, so we'll know that we're dealing with a question. You have what fruit? Question mark. And then in the English, you have what fruit? Should be a question mark out there as well, but not as important there as it is here. Now, then he says it may be used without a noun. The illustration is, what do you say? Tis leis. Now, students have fun with this one. What do you say? Ti leis. That's the example is shown here. Ti leis. You say what? You say what? And there's the translation. You say what? So it's just the object of the verb leis. Then the third example, a certain man said. Now there, the certain man is not diagrammed. The certain man said is simply yes it is, I'm sorry, in the indefinite pronoun. Here we are. Tis anthropos. A certain man said. That's for the indefinite. And it's just acting as a modifier, an adjective. Which man? A certain man. Not much of a modifier, but still a modifier, adjective. And then, here, without a noun, same paragraph, a certain man said, without the anthropos. Just tis, acting as the noun there. So, as an adjective, as a noun, in these two illustrations. Then, the relative clauses. Paragraph 397, and we want to skip over the deliberative question for just a moment, and the indirect question, because we want to stay with the pronouns. And we have the uses of the relative pronoun on paragraph 397. O apostolos, on ides apilthen. The man whom you saw. You see his illustration there. The apostle whom you saw went away. Now, that would be diagrammed in this way. The apostle whom you saw went away. And this is what we've had already in Machen. The apostle, which apostle? We've had it in 1 John. Whom you saw. It tells which apostle. The apostle whom you saw went away. So it's really modifying it. It's a relative clause. It's a relative pronoun. Being masculine singular agrees with apostolos. Okay. So the that illustration shows the use of the relative clause as an adjective. Now, you may skip page 54 and go to page 55. The page 54 is actually comes after page 57. So if you turn to page 55 and began to number this one as 54 and so forth, and then when you put 54 back in, put it in as 57. In other words, move it back, because this should go in line with that. So, on page 55 of your workbook, you'll see more illustrations in the same paragraph. All the things which Jesus said were true. That's one illustration. All the things which Jesus said. All the things. And then which Jesus said. Modifying all things. And then he says were true. So all things were true. Which all things? All things which Jesus said. Again, I think we get a feel for the relative pronoun with this. His next illustration is the disciple whom Jesus loved was in the house. The disciple, which one? Whom Jesus loved. All this modifying, mathitis, was in the house. Now, he says in 398 that sometimes the relative pronoun will be attracted to the case of its antecedent. Remember, the antecedent is the word to which it refers. And so he gives us an example that when all were wondering at all the things which he was doing, he said to his disciples. Now, recognize this pondone here. this is a genitive absolute, chapter 20. After all were wondering about all, and then the relative clause, all what? All things which he was doing. Now, in this clause here, you'd expect that this would be us, not is. Is is the dative, see? That's a dative plural. Passen is dative. So you'd expect us down here. Instead, you get is. So the us changes to is as a result of the case of its antecedent. Now, this will happen in the genitive and dative very often. So often attracted to the case of its antecedent. Now, that is shown there on page 55 of your workbook. Then, on paragraph 399, we have the unexpressed antecedent of the relative pronoun. He, who. You see that? Or that which, and so forth. The relative clause used strictly as a substantive noun. So he says that his example is the first example. It is not lawful for me to do that which I wish. So the diagram here is to do. I didn't move my page. Paragraph 399. To do that which I wish is not lawful to me. This is like paragraph 302 in the infinitives. To do is not lawful. To do that which I wish is not lawful to me. This is a little bit of a strange situation. Actually, the translation that we have here, that which I wish to do is not lawful, is really not what he's saying. The to do ought to go over here. To do that which I wish is not lawful. Would be a better translation. That's not impossible, but it's easier to see if you have the to do over here. To do that which I wish is not lawful for me. All right, that's the unexpressed antecedent. That which. Then his second example is he who is not against you is for you. You see that there in paragraph 399? He who. See, we've had this in 1 John, so this is not new to you. He who is not against us is for, or against you is for you. See? So the he who there, it's unexpressed antecedent. He who. Okay? That's paragraph 399. Then, we want to go back now and pick up deliberative questions. Paragraph 394. Deliberative question is a question which expects an answer in the imperative mood. Now, don't let that throw you. You're just saying, when a person says, what shall we do? Shall we do this or shall we do this? It expects an answer, it expects someone to say, well, do this. And in the process, he's deliberating. Shall we do this or shall we do that? A deliberation. So we call it a deliberative question. And in that, the Greek uses a subjunctive mood in deliberative question. So here's his point. Shall we do this or shall we not? Shall we do this or shall we not? So the Greek then would be, we shall do this or we shall not do this. And then it's a question. So we say, shall we do this or shall we not? Deliberative question. And the point is that he's using the subjunctive in deliberative question. Or, number 2 example, what shall we do? And again, the subjunctive. You see the long variable vowel, omega instead of omicron. That tells you have a subjunctive. So that's all he's saying there. They use subjunctive in the deliberative question. Then paragraph 392 and 393, the indirect questions. The same interrogative words are commonly used in indirect questions as those used in the direct questions. I'm not going to be too concerned with this, except to say this is very much like indirect discourse. So his example is, He asked him who he was. He asked him who he is, say, retaining the same tense in the Greek. He asked him who he is. We would say he asked him who he was, because indirect discourse with a past time main verb, the tense of the helping verb goes back, or the tense of the verb goes back one step from is to was. And then his second example, he told them where he was abiding. He told them he was abiding where? Now the pu, the relative adverb, makes that a relative clause. He told them what? Where he was abiding. And so that pu there, relative adverb, will make that a relative clause acting as the object of epen. Then the conditional relative clause, paragraph 400. Whoever, we've had this already. Whoever does this, we had it in 1 John. If we didn't, we will very soon. The os and the on, or os and on, are used together to make whoever, whichever, whatever. You see the example. Whoever wishes to save his life or soul shall not save it. And you see that example on page 54. So go to your page 54 now in the workbook, and you'll see the conditional relative clause. Whoever wishes to save his life will not save it. Just a conditional relative. Whoever. So whenever you see os on or os on, put them together and make it the subject or whatever, wherever it fits. But usually the subject, whoever. Whoever, whichever, whatever. Again, here. Whoever believes will be saved. Os on. The third illustration is a little bit more of problem diagramming. You may want to do something different, I don't know. But you saw disciple in the city. You will see the disciple in the city, in it, into whichever city you enter. So do it the other way around. Into whichever city you enter, you will see a disciple in it. Into whichever city you enter, you will see disciples in it, the plural, disciples. You will see disciples in it. So what I've done is I've made this the object of the preposition, which it obviously is. The indefinite relative there. Making that a relative clause, object of a preposition, into whichever city you enter. You will see disciples in it. So there's a lot of constructions here, things that we need to keep up on and learn how to diagram. We need to go back over those and do a few extra exercises perhaps in order to get those in our minds and see how they work. If you have any questions about them, then maybe we can give you a help by writing to us. Let us know something. We're in Miami now, and whenever we're somewhere else, then the East West Video Productions and the Video Bible Library will know where we are. We'll be glad to help you. Now go to 1 John. 1 John 1, verses 9 and 10. And we have a very familiar verse here. Which starts off in your text, if we confess our sin. Notice the on takes the subjunctive, and again we're dealing with a future condition. If at any time we confess our sins, then the result of that will be he is faithful and righteous. Or under this condition, he is faithful and just or righteous. Not in order that. Ina has another meaning, there are other meanings, and I take it this is probably a result. He is faithful and righteous with the result that he forgives. Now this is from a fimi. He forgives to us the sins, and cleanses us from all unrighteousness or every unrighteousness. Now, condition, if we confess our sins, what happens? He is faithful and righteous, with the result that He forgives us the sin and cleanses us from all unrighteousness. This aphi here, we'll get that in another lesson. It comes from this word, aphimi. Aphimi. And that is the stem is really only this word, this part right here. That's the stem. That's a preposition there. That's a something added to the word that tells you it's present tense. So that's not in there because that's an aorist. So all you have is for stem is that, and that's the ending. So this is an aorist subjunctive, third singular. But that's a little strange word. We'll get into that in lesson 30, and you'll understand more about that. We're going to lesson 28 next time, the imperative mood, the mood of command, and then we'll do the first two verses of 1 John.